and welcome back. Thank you all for joining me for another episode of Under the Influence. And today we'll be watching a short documentary called How Brands Use Design and Marketing to Control Your Mind. Now, I didn't see this video yet. I watched a little bit of it and it did look intriguing, so hopefully it's a really good watch. It's from the channel called Design Theory, so if you want to check out more of it, you can click the link below. I'll post the link in the description. So let's go.
Brands can profoundly shape our actions and even our physiology. This is Tylenol, and this is generic store brand medicine. They have the exact same ingredients, so they should work the same, but they don't. If one of the pills costs more, it'll be more effective. Even the color of a pill and its packaging can dictate how effective it is. It's all in the branding and design, and this extends far beyond Tylenol. Wine tastes better when poured from a heavier bottle. Food tastes better when it's plated beautifully. Just the mere presence of a MasterCard logo can trigger customers to spend 30% more than they normally would. Companies understand that brands are like placebos. They use all sorts of mind tricks to get us to see what they want. It's gotten to a point where brands aren't just selling you a product. They're selling you a tribal group identity that they want you to be a part of. They reel you in with clever branding and beautiful design. So, how do they do it? And is this a good thing, or is company branding and design all just a bunch of manipulative BS? I've spent over a decade thinking about this throughout my design career, and I've read a lot.
It's a good thing if they stood by what they said.
And because the answer is so nuanced, I've created a BS intensity spectrum, which is based on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane scale. On one end is a little drizzle of creative liberty, still grounded in reality. But the other end is a category 5 fecal tempest of deception, where companies toss truth to the wind just to drive sales, creating a huge gap between marketing claims and actual reality. On this quest to unravel branding insights, you'll get a deep understanding of human psychology and how design hooks into our primal instincts and desires. So, let's work our way up the continuum. The most basic form of branding is simply labeling your product, which has been around since at least 2000 BC. Craftsmen would imprint symbols onto their goods to show where they came from. This may not seem like a big deal, but it's actually a very important way to protect customers. The Soviet Union learned this the hard way. Brand names were seen as anti-communist, so bread was just labeled bread. No matter what company made the bread, the packaging and labels were all the same. If you bit into some bread that was stale or moldy, you have no way of knowing which company to avoid. Producers weren't held accountable, so the quality of many products were truly terrible. This wasn't only about bread, it went as deep as rivets, those tiny little things holding ships together. Factories churned out unbranded rivets that got jumbled up into one central facility. No one knew where each rivet came from, so once again, there was no incentive for companies to make good rivets. So why does this matter? Well, it starts to matter a lot when ships start springing leaks and sinking to the bottom of the ocean. The Soviets did finally end up having factories stamp their brand names onto their products, and quality went up. Producers were held accountable, and customers knew which brands to trust.
Sometimes nothing brings people together like a nice hot pizza from Pizza Hut.
Branding helps solve a problem called information asymmetry. This is when sellers know everything about what they're selling and buyers know almost nothing about what they're buying. If you're buying from a well-established brand, there's a lot of information and inherent trust built into that transaction. So branding isn't always about manipulating into buying things you don't need. Without brands, there's an increased incentive for companies to create a cheaper, lower quality product because they make a greater profit while suffering no reputational consequences. Now, that's one good reason for branding, but as designers and marketers know, branding is really about influencing people emotionally. This can be used for good or evil. For example, we don't brush our teeth primarily for health reasons. I mean, sure, that's definitely a big part of it, but for most people, that's not the main reason. Brushing your teeth is about being confident and removing stains or bad breath, and that's also why toothpaste is usually mint flavored. It makes your mouth feel fresh. The mint doesn't give any practical health benefits. We might think we do things for logical reasons, but emotions often drive us. Many people believe emotions are unreliable, but they're actually crucial evolutionary shortcuts that help us. For example, our strong dislike for dirty or rotting things isn't based on a logical understanding of germs. Our caveman ancestors that stayed away from rotting things lived longer, so we developed a negative emotional response to it thousands or even millions of years ago, way before we ever knew about germs. Emotions tap into a biological and intuitive need without all the processing, and good designers know this emotional alchemy like the back of their hands. It's like buying a Tesla. The buyer might might insist that it's because they want to take care of the environment, but it's more likely that it's just fun to drive and show off as a status symbol. Otherwise, they just drive a Nissan Leaf or something. So anyway, look, these branding examples are all pretty harmless, but things will get worse with the rising tide of the BS continuum. The next level of the continuum is about visual shorthand. So here's a simple example. Toothpaste stripes. And yes, this is the last mention of toothpaste I'll make in the video. But why have stripes? Once you start brushing, it all mixes together anyway. The stripes don't serve any logical purpose, but they do look cool and they show you that the toothpaste does more than one thing in a visual way, like fighting cavities and freshening breath. People love any visual, visible effort that goes into a product. If you just say that it's an improved toothpaste formula, but it looks exactly the same as before, it's not as convincing. If you add something visual like stripes, it's a lot more believable. Adding visuals to highlight real benefits seems reasonable enough, but we steer into murkier waters when designers add elements that don't honestly convey the product's benefits. Car companies sometimes add fake vents to their car designs, for example. Lots of car enthusiasts complain about this because it makes the car look more powerful
Yeah, I know
than
about
it
that.
really is. It feels a little dishonest. And this is maybe a hot take, but I ranked this example pretty low. Cars are sculpted to exude power and agility, and designers do all sorts of visual tricks to convey that. Why draw the line at fake vents? What about the flashy styling lines or fancy rims? They're mostly visual shorthand, just like the vents, and no one complains about that. Imagine if we got rid of any visual element of a car that was not primarily functional. A Lamborghini would start to look more like a 1996 Camry. If we think back to the Tylenol example from the beginning of the video, looks can genuinely affect how we perceive things and even how effective products are. Maybe those fake vents or cool rims are a placebo that helps us drive better. At the very least, it keeps things interesting. To be clear, I think visual shorthand does become a problem when brands use it to highlight an element that is completely fake. For example, there are some speakers that have two drivers in them, but only one of them is real. When you get speakers with fake drivers, it's messing with the main reason you bought them, for the sound quality. You probably paid more thinking that the extra driver is real. On the other hand, fake vents don't significantly change how well the car runs. We don't have time to meticulously analyze every single detail when buying something. For most purchases, you just make a snap judgment based on a few indicators. Imagine analyzing and comparing price, specs, materials, and quality for every single item on your grocery list. You just go insane. That's why visual shorthand is valuable. Branding and design helps to convey what's good about a product without making us do all the work. There are situations where we make more calculated decisions when there's a lot at stake, but most buying decisions just aren't that important. Most of the time you're right, sometimes you're wrong. It only becomes a problem when companies actively try to deceive us. This type of visual signaling extends way beyond the design of the product itself. We don't just buy the thing. We buy based on the trustworthiness and reputation of the person selling the thing. Nice packaging and storefronts are signals that they're trustworthy businesses counting on repeat customers. A company that spends time after you have bought and paid for a product to make sure you're not disappointed is more likely to be trustworthy, especially when contrasted with a company that just runs away right after you've bought something. That's why Sephora gives you nice little bags with the little rope handles. It's an extra expense for them, but it signals that they're trustworthy and care about your long-term experience. Also, the more a seller has to lose in terms of their reputation, the more confident you can be in their quality control.
those are
It's why
things
you buy
I
sandwiches
don't
from
understand.
sandwich shops with a storefront and employees rather than some guy selling $5 footlongs out of his van down by the river. The sandwich shop
Why would
stands
you
to
put
lose
more
a
trust
lot
in
if the food gets you
Sephora?
sick. They have an entire business and infrastructure,
they have
and they
ropes
can
at
get
the end of
sued
their
if something
bags.
goes wrong. The guy in the van down by the river will probably be gone the next day, and once again, we don't just buy the thing. We buy based on the trustworthiness and reputation of the person selling the thing. You might think this stuff doesn't work on you, but you'd be surprised. During a project where I was designing food packaging, I noticed that when the packaging designs made the food appear more appetizing, people almost universally reported that the food tasted a lot better too. These things really do influence our perception. That's why good brands don't focus on what people say, but
Unconsciously,
instead
I
focus
believe
on
that
what they
too.
feel and what they do. Now here's the thing. Scam companies know that real or honest companies use these kinds of signaling devices too, so they try to emulate their behavior in order to rip you off. And I'll talk more about this later in the video. But generally speaking, if you're doing a quick scam, it doesn't pay off to incur too many expenses with high quality branding and design. These strategies can be abused, but they're pretty reliable overall. As we venture deeper into the storm though, things go from slightly questionable to full-on dumpster fire. There was a study conducted where a company was trying to raise donations for a charity for, ironically enough, hurricane relief. These envelopes were mailed out to millions of people. Some of the envelopes were different from the others. Tell me if you can guess which ones raised the most money. 100,000 were hand-delivered by volunteers, 100,000 were delivered in an envelope that opened in portrait format, 100,000 were in higher quality envelopes, and 100,000 encouraged people to complete a form, which gave them a 25% tax rebate. Logic would tell you the 25% tax rebate is the one that raised the most money. If you donate $1, you get 25 cents back. None of the other things matter, right? I mean, who cares about a fancy envelope? Why does it matter if it's hand-delivered? But as you've probably already learned from this video, logic doesn't always matter when it comes to human decision making. The 25% tax rebate actually performed the worst out of all of the above options. In fact, they got 30% fewer donations. The other options increased donations by over 10%. The higher quality paper also tended to encourage people to give big donations of more than $100. So what's going on here? I mean, a lot of it has to do with visual signaling, which we explained earlier, but another possible reason for the success of the nicer envelopes is the rule of reciprocation. We feel the need to return
We are not rational beings.
When someone goes out of their way to hand deliver an envelope to you, you feel indebted to them. We hate the feeling of being indebted or beholden to someone else, so we often do outsized things to get rid of that feeling of obligation. Companies also exploit this when they offer free samples, knowing customers will feel compelled to buy. In one study at a California candy shop, customers were 42% more likely to make a purchase when they were given free samples. You'd think this happened because the customers liked the product.
Yeah, I think that too.
That wasn't the case here. They usually bought other types of candies, not the ones that they got free samples of. And lastly, we equate effort with quality. When we see a higher level of effort put into something, we assume that it's worthwhile. If I tell you that I wrote this video in one day, you might not think much of it. But if I tell you I researched it for months and have 100 pages of extra notes, you probably feel a lot more confident that what I'm saying is true. When companies put in a bit of extra effort, we appreciate it and feel more inclined to support them. In Robert Cialdini's book, Influence, he describes a Beijing restaurant chain that wanted to boost profits without any extra effort or cost. They didn't want to source better ingredients or improve their recipes or spend any money on advertising. This sounds impossible, right? They tried labeling menu items chef special or house recommendation with limited success. But labeling menu items with two magical words made all the difference. Most popular. Sales went up by 13 to 20% without changing anything else. That is social proof. Social proof is relying on others' opinions to make choices, especially when we don't have enough information to make an informed decision. That's why marketers focus on what is highest rated or best selling. They don't need to convince you that a product is good. They just need to convince you that other people think it's good. If you've read Amazon reviews or chosen a popular on Netflix show, you've used social proof. Speaking of social proof, you should subscribe to my channel, or don't. Do whatever the heck you want. I don't even know why I still say this. But anyway, social proof is category 2 on the BS continuum. So let's talk about the way it can be manipulative or unethical. First of all, it's extremely easy for companies to fake this. Fake online reviews are pretty common. Same thing with fake testimonials. Plus, you're relying on someone else to do the research for you, which can be extremely dangerous. I mean, check out Tom Brady here, one of the greatest football players of all time, endorsing FTX, a cryptocurrency exchange that ended up being a huge fraud, at least allegedly. I don't know if it's proven yet. Where many investors
a lot of celebrities were in
Involving
that.
Brady is a classic form of social proof. But look at the tactics here.
Yeah, I'm in.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm in.
I'm in. Hey, Arthur, I quit.
Even if Tom Brady doesn't convince you, you've got all these other people saying, I'm in. You've got line cooks, surgeons, plumbers, women, men, all of various ethnicities
Actors.
and backgrounds. This is very intentional.
But
Social proof
we
is even more
subconsciously
effective
believe
on
that
us
they're
when the people
actual
endorsing the product
workers.
are similar to us. If we see people similar to us doing something, it doesn't just mean that it's a good idea, it also means that it's possible for us to do it. It seems more achievable.
Yeah.
It's similar to when Roger
That's smart.
Bannister ran a mile in under 4 minutes. Bannister trained for years to achieve that goal, but once he did it, other runners followed suit just a few weeks later. Social proof manipulation happens in way more subtle ways as well, like this ad with Selena Gomez and her makeup line. Notice the setting. This is a massive brand that brings in like $60 million a year, and Selena Gomez is an A-list celebrity. You're telling me she can't afford a good microphone and some good lights? I mean, look at this one. You think they accidentally just left the ruffled blanket on the couch by accident? This is all by design. They're leveraging her star power and influence, but they want to make her seem more relatable to you. Once again, social
'cause
proof
that's
is
what a
more
lot of
effective when the people
influencers
promoting
do.
the product seem like our peers.
They'll
This
sit
is
in
why
a
you need to
room
be
with
very
their
skeptical about unrehearsed
iPhone.
testimonials, ads, and tutorials like this.
And
So
their
yeah, social proof can be really
clothes on the
manipulative, but it
background
isn't
on the
always
bed.
bad. Online reviews and testimonials, as long as they're verified, can be incredibly useful. And if a respected celebrity endorses a product, their reputation is at stake. Selena Gomez probably does really believe in her products, and as a person with a following, you live and die by your reputation. Designers and brand managers leverage the influence of authority in their messaging all the time, in both explicit and subtle ways. Back in the 80s, there was a really successful cough medicine ad. Confident man tells you Vicks Formula 44 will cure your cough. The man is Dr. Rick Weber, a character from the hit TV show General Hospital. The actor mentions he's not a doctor, but he plays one on TV. But that doesn't really matter. With his tailored suit, a confident demeanor, and an authoritative voice, he plays a very convincing doctor. In Robert Cialdini's book Influence, he shines a spotlight on this ad as an intriguing example of authority in advertising. Once again, the actor wasn't a medical expert, but that's why it's so crazy, because viewers associated him with his TV doctor character. The ad hit gold, and it was a massive hit that ran for years. This shows you how powerful authority is in shaping our decisions. You don't need to be a real authority. All you need is the aura of authority, and people will follow you. Now, using fake authority figures to shill cough medicine is pretty bad, but it gets a lot worse. Medical experts started to make the connection between lung cancer and smoking by the 1930s. In order to combat this sentiment, Camel cigarettes created an ad in 1946 that featured doctors. They created the tagline that would make modern-day fact-checkers' heads explode. More doctors smoke Camels. I mean, can you imagine? They don't just say the bold claim. They use every trick in the book to make doctors look like trustworthy authority figures. There's a sea of white coats, stethoscopes everywhere, an entourage of scholarly-looking doctors puffing away. And this is where the harmless facade of authority turns into a blatant cover-up, blurring the lines between reality and fiction. Now, don't get me wrong, I love a little creative liberty. Remember the fake vents from earlier in the video? But when it completely is misaligned with reality, that's a problem, especially when lives are at stake. These are more explicit forms of showing authority, but a lot of the times it's even more subtle. In the animal kingdom, size matters. It's common for animals to puff themselves up to avoid combat. Mammals bristle their fur, fish expand their fins and puff up, birds flaunt their feathers. The goal is to appear larger and more dominant. Instead of risking it all in battle, many animals turn to optical illusions to puff up their size and flex their authority. Our human instincts aren't that different. We're all hardwired to associate size with status and authority. Ever been wowed by an Apple launch event? Or gone to a store to see merchandise enshrined in glass cases? Brands are doing their own version of puffing up their feathers here. These elements can craft illusions of grandeur and strength, but it's important to look past that facade. As Cialdini says in his book, just like fur, fins, and feathers, these surface-level elements masterfully project an air of substance and gravitas that may not actually be real. Bottom line, next time you see a company flexing its authority, take a second look. Is there substance or is it just fluff? Now, of course, not all expert opinions or authority figures are bad. Sometimes all you need to do is ask yourself two questions. Number one, is the person actually an authority figure in this space? And number two, what does this person gain by convincing us of this information? Now it's getting more serious. Category 4. And a bunch of hurricanes and shit. This is a Di Tommaso Pantera. It was bought for $2,500 in 1976, but just 2 years later, the car's value skyrocketed to an astonishing $300,000. But why? It was a terribly unreliable car, suffered a lot of wear and tear, and most intriguing of all were the bullet holes that pierced the steering wheel. How does a used car with bullet holes in it sell for more than 100 times its original
Elvis Presley's
price?
car.
It all comes down to scarcity. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, was in a heated argument with his girlfriend, Linda Thompson. When Linda left, Elvis stormed off and jumped into the car, probably hoping to dramatically peel out of the parking lot. But instead, the car wouldn't start. So in a moment of fiery passion, he took his Colt 45 and shot at the steering wheel. Yes, those bullet holes are the very echoes of Elvis's fiery soul. And this is where the scarcity principle takes center stage. Those bullet holes serve as an autograph. They're a symbol of Elvis's raw and untamed spirit, captured forever in steel. There's never going to be another Elvis. So this Pantera isn't just a regular car anymore. It's a canvas that captured a moment in the king's life. This is a testament to how scarcity turns the ordinary into the extraordinary. Shout out to my buddy Rafi for telling me about this story. This is common with collectible items like coins, limited edition Pokemon cards, and even rare stamps. But design and branding teams use the same principle of scarcity to sell you all kinds of things. When Booking.com first started showing a limited number of hotel rooms at a given price, people started snatching up rooms so fast that customer service thought it was a systems error. But the increase in sales came from showing a limited supply. Shoppers who would normally be sort of on the fence about booking a room quickly turned into buyers.
Yeah,
Things
I know
can
they
get
do
so
that a lot.
competitive that
Very
people
smart.
could often wait days to get a new pair of Nikes or the next iPhone. It's no secret that we want what we can't have. Not only do we want the same item more when it's scarce, but we want it more when we're in competition for it. This is classic fear of missing out. There's nothing wrong with actual scarcity. If an item is not available because of supply chain or manufacturing issues, that's understandable. But in most cases, there's no reason why Apple can't make more phones or fashion brands can't make more clothes in anticipation of a launch. They intentionally create an extremely limited supply of shoes in order to create what is known as artificial scarcity. Artificial scarcity brings out some of our worst tendencies. Logic flies out the window and everything is reduced down to one basic instinct: greed.
2020 pandemic showed that everywhere.
In the same way that big authoritative branding flexes are like an animal instinctually puffing up their feathers, artificial scarcity puts us into a primal feeding frenzy mindset. We're operating on a very simple premise that is true most of the time. Things that are hard to get are often better than things that are easy to get. This is a very general rule that holds true, and that's why scarcity tactics are so effective. It's also one reason why a lot of retail stores bring only a couple items out to the storefront at a time. Not being able to see all the items in stock gives you no indication of whether or not there are any left. Plus, you might feel the need to reciprocate with the store clerk after they went through the trouble of finding the item for you. It's so easy to get swept up into the frenzy. Of course, the best way to combat this is to think to yourself, do I actually want this thing because it's rare? Or do I just want it because I need it for its functional utility? If it's the latter, you can calm down. If it's the former, try to assess it more calmly. The bottom line is that scarcity and loss aversion are some of the most effective design and marketing tactics there are, purely because of how emotionally triggering they are. But it's nothing compared to the next level in the continuum. This isn't just any normal hurricane. It's a Category 5 fecal tempest. Let's talk about the great Nike barbecue of 2018. A roaring blaze of sneakers and corporate moral high ground. Nike wanted to partner with Colin Kaepernick for an ad campaign. Kaepernick was a very skilled American football player, but he's probably most famous for taking a knee during the national anthem in order to bring attention to racial injustice and police brutality. Nike decided to make Kaepernick their spokesperson and created the tagline,
"Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything."
After these incidents, it isn't clear whether the NFL blacklisted him or if he quit on his own accord, but one thing for certain is that he was a very controversial figure. So why would Nike sponsor such a controversial athlete, potentially alienating a huge chunk of their audience? Nike was trying to build a sense of unity with a segment of its audience who agreed with the Kaepernick ad campaign. This might not sound like much, but I assure you, it's a very, very powerful technique. In unified tribal groups, there's a blurring between the self and others in your tribe. Neuroscientists have an answer to this phenomenon. It turns out, if you're asked to imagine yourself and someone from your tribe, the same brain circuitry lights up. So thoughts of self and tribe members blend together, and suddenly your identities are interwoven like a tapestry inside your mind. This doesn't happen with people who aren't tribe members. Unified tribal groups tend to act in solidarity with each other. We like each other more, we trust each other more, and we're more likely to help each other out. Brands know that
Community.
if you view them as part of your tribe, you'll be far more likely to buy their products. So with Nike, it's really not about the shoes or the clothes. The swoosh is just a banner under which the Tribe for Racial Equality and Social Justice gathers. They made themselves part of the tribe's fabric, and suddenly everyone wears Nike as if it's the uniform of social change. The purchase of a product is like a ticket into a club. When you buy a product, for better or for worse, you're making a statement to yourself and to the outer world about what you believe in. It's
That's
a social
true.
signaling device. Even the choice to actively avoid it and not participate in it is its own kind of signaling device. For example, driving a Tesla is basically a signaling device that you're part of the in-group of young, ambitious, wealthy tech workers. Patagonia is another similar signal of environmental consciousness. Even my leather jacket. Did I ever tell you that this here jacket represents a symbol of my individuality and my belief in personal freedom? It's all social signaling. So what about the people who disagreed with the ad campaign? Well, remember how I called this the Nike barbecue of 2018? Lots of people hated this ad, and they decided to post about it on Twitter, a domain where rationality takes a back seat and outrage has its foot firmly planted on the gas pedal. People were boycotting Nike by
Yeah, I
burning
remember
shoes
that.
they've already paid for. In the end, this
It
outrage
drove their
was just a
sales
bunch
up.
of free publicity for Nike, plus the people who agreed with Nike's views doubled down and unified with their tribal group. If you know about the unity principle, this makes perfect sense. An attack on the brand is a personal attack on the individuals who support the brand. All said and done, this resulted in $6 billion in profits for Nike.
Wow.
That's the power of unity and tribalism. But when companies jump into social causes, it's worth pondering how genuine it is, because at the end of the day, Companies exist to make profits. You could make an argument that they're trying to build awareness for a cause, but I'm very skeptical. Nike doesn't exactly have the greatest track record when it comes to working conditions, and if it wasn't profitable to sponsor Kaepernick, Nike would find a way to drop him. Nike
I
is certainly
honestly
not the
believe
only
that
company
too.
to
Dave
use the
Chappelle
unity
talked about
principle
that.
either.
That's why I don't have a sneaker deal, because if you say something that people don't like, they'll take your fucking shoes off. If Martin Luther King had a sneaker deal, we'd still be on the back of the bus. They always true, the Nike exec come up, "Hi, Martin, we need you to tone down the talk of civil rights and blacks being humans. It's upsetting our southern distributors." But I don't understand. I thought that's why I had a sneaker deal in the first place. Not quite. Really, it's a walking shoe, and we like the marching, but try to understand.
You've got Chick-fil-A, Gillette, Jeremy's Chocolate, Pepsi, Black Rifle Coffee Company, Dove Soap, Patriot Mobile, all on varying ends of the political spectrum. If we take Chick-fil-A as an example, the fast food chain has been known for its stance on LGBTQ issues and its support for organizations that oppose same-sex marriage. But in 2019, they announced that they would no longer donate to these organizations, mostly because of public pressure. Companies are only going to champion a cause for as long as it's profitable. Other companies have been following suit with varying levels of success. Nike's ad was relatively tasteful, whereas other ads have faced considerable backlash and a huge plummet in sales. Things get dangerous for a brand when they inject themselves into a cultural, political, or environmental issue outside of their expertise and understanding. When companies take this route, they have to be really tactful in the way they approach it because it can easily be exposed for what it is, an advertisement meant to sell you a product. But most of the time, companies that use the unity principle are a lot more subtle about it. In fact, most of the time it has nothing to do with politics at all. I mean, let's look at the Selena Gomez makeup ad again. This isn't just social proof, it's a calculated move to evoke the unity principle, forging a connection that makes you feel as if you and Selena are in the same tribe. Watch the intro.
Papa, you're in my video. I pranked you.
It's almost like she's casually spending a day with her family and she's in a homey setting that mirrors the everyday life of her target audience. A bit later, she says this.
I wanted to create a line where
See, that's
it was
all
in
fake.
for people
That's-
like me.
It doesn't get more obvious than that. I mean, Selena wants you to think to
talking to
yourself,
her papa,
she's
but
one of
she
us.
really isn't.
It's a lot more subtle than the politically charged ads, but when you feel that bond, you're more likely to trust and support each other. Selena's marketing team is banking on that. Now look, I'm an open-minded guy. If finding purpose in your preferred brand or makeup or shoes or cars makes you happy, that's great. But let's remember that brands are not benevolent protectors of values. They're in it for the money. Purchases have meaning, but nowhere to draw the line. If you find yourself setting fire to your favorite shoes because you don't like the company's new ad, you're probably taking it way too far. Same thing if you feel the need to defend a multi-billion-dollar corporation on social media. Trust me, they'll be fine without you. No brand's attempt at unity is important enough to get worked up about. That's exactly what they want you to do anyway. And that's why I find these techniques especially harmful. Essentially, unity tactics are used to build a cult with their brand's values at the centerpiece of your world. But brands are not a stand-in for real spiritual meaning or a sense of real community. Now, what if a brand told you they were manipulating you? Is this better or worse? There's some companies that don't even hide the fact that they're basically building a cult. It's as if these brands are playing 4D chess with our brains. And while part of you wants to give them applause for their sheer audacity, another part wonders if these companies are just laughing at us for being so gullible. Let's dive into the deep end with Liquid Death, a name that suggests some sort of horrifically cheap liquor or maybe just
water.
poison. But no, Liquid Death is just plain water, encased in a can that looks like it was ripped straight out of an 80s metal band's merchandise store. As a
is definitely
commodity, this is
marketed
as
to
basic
kids.
as it gets. Water covers 71% of the earth, and somehow we found a way to brand it. Liquid Death's branding is an exercise in absurdity that's so over the top you can't help but laugh at it. They engage in some seriously dark humor, and the water is super fun to drink because the packaging looks like a beer can. And yes, I know how stupid that
Beer
sounds,
can
but it's
or
true.
a,
It's really fun to drink. They're not even
Monster
trying to be
energy
subtle with
drink.
manipulating you either. Their marketing VP is called the VP of Cult Indoctrination. It's like they're saying, yeah, we're brainwashing you. Here's your cloak and cult membership card. The real kicker is that it kind of
Indoctrinating you
works,
to drink
but is this
alcohol
brutal honesty
at an
in
early
marketing
age.
genuine or just another layer of manipulation? It's like they're whispering, we're in on the joke together, but are we? It's hard to say. I do want to acknowledge that Liquid Death is actually pretty good water. Their claims are in line with reality, which makes it feel a lot more authentic, and they also take a portion of profits and donate it to cleaning up plastics in the ocean. I have to say Liquid Death's brand of honesty is both ridiculous and kind of brilliant. It's like they've harnessed the raw energy of 100 internet trolls to sell us water. My only critique is that their claims about their environmental friendliness are a little bit dubious. Yes, aluminum is very recyclable and plastic bottles are worse for the environment, but I wouldn't say aluminum cans are good for the environment. Drinking tap water is generally going to be a better option than any packaged water. I wanted to bring this up because I think that in order for a brand to be low on the BS spectrum, its claims need to be as in line with reality as possible. But besides that, Liquid Death is actually pretty low on the BS spectrum in spite of being completely over the top. They mostly do back up just about everything they say. But remember, it's still just water in a fancy can. So why does this work? Well, here's the thing. The best companies understand that branding and design is about creating meaning. Remember, we don't value things, we value what they mean to us. Check out, so why does this work? Well, here's the thing. The best companies understand that branding and design is about creating meaning. Remember, we don't value things, we value what they mean to us. Check out this lowly $1 bill.
We don't value things,
There's
we value what they mean
$1
to
bill
us.
worth more than $1. If you somehow managed to corner Bill Gates and Warren Buffett in an elevator and asked them to scribble their names on this thing, the value of this is multiplied significantly. We attach meaning to things through symbolism and storytelling. This is what company branding capitalizes on. A brand is like an autographed dollar. It adds value through the stories and symbols associated with it. People don't just buy the product. They buy into the story the product represents. All of the objects and things in our lives are like little repositories of meaning. Good brands understand this, and sometimes all it takes is one descriptive word to change everything. It's why Liquid Death doesn't just say that their product is water. It's mountain water from the Austrian Alps. The Austrian Alps has an entire legacy and vivid history attached to it. A description or a label directs a person's attention towards certain features in a product and helps bring out a certain concept in our mind. The nature of our attention affects the nature of our experience. This goes way beyond just names. It can encapsulate an entire brand's ethos. At the end of the day, is Apple selling metal electronic rectangles, or are they selling tools that allow you to express yourself creatively? Is Nike just selling foot protection, or are they allowing you to reach your full athletic potential? Each version of these stories are true to varying degrees, but some companies take it way too far for my personal taste. I mean, apparently this Pepsi logo is based on Earth's magnetic fields and gravitational pull, and if that's true, great. I'm all for expressing ideas in a subtle way using visual shorthand, but after a certain point, it just comes off as psychotic overanalyzing. So, is there a problem here?
Well, you never know. It could have
depends.
some kind of
Adding meaning to
subconscious
things
meaning to
isn't
us.
necessarily a bad thing, and our mental shortcuts exist for a reason. They're insanely effective. A person in the modern era has to make 35,000 decisions in a day. Meanwhile, we're so overwhelmed that we're like cats in a laser pointer disco, frantically chasing everything while catching nothing. When we're stressed, tired, or distracted, we just don't have the time to analyze every little detail. So we tap into the mental shortcuts like authority, scarcity, etc., to help us make decisions. This is why good photography matters. It's why having 3 stripes on a toothpaste matters. It's why good packaging and good design and good branding matters. When these mental shortcuts are based on reliable information, it's great. But as you've seen, designers and brand managers try to exploit these shortcuts for their own gain. What's best for the company? As soon as we ask that question, it's all over, because the answer is always whatever's going to make the company the most money. A company is just a machine existing as its own independent, abstract entity. They optimize profits at all costs, sometimes at the expense of their employees, the planet, and the end customer. Companies demand constant scale and growth. Even in humane, mission-driven companies, when push comes to shove, we need to be able to support our family. We want to buy a house. We want stability in our lives. If the decision is between feeding your family versus stretching the truth a little bit, most people are going to choose the latter. Like many issues that I see in companies, the problem is rooted in fear. This is a tough problem to solve, but one thing I've found is that if you don't live in fear, you can act more authentically. Sometimes, as a designer, it can be hard for me to figure out whether I'm being manipulative with my design work or not. One thing that helped me was to define manipulation more clearly. Within this context, manipulating is influencing someone for your benefit without their consent. Contrast this with educating someone. Educating someone is influencing someone for their benefit with their consent. You want to educate, not manipulate. I first heard this from my friend Anjan, and I think it's a good guideline for checking my own behavior. I'm far from perfect, but as a designer, I think this is a good question to ask yourself every once in a while. Commerce is an inescapable reality, but we can still try to leave a legacy behind that's not only prosperous, but also kind, compassionate, and wise. Branding and design can definitely stretch the truth, but it's like a magic show. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors. It's okay if the audience is in on the joke and suspends their disbelief in order to enjoy the show. It's only a problem when companies try to trick you into thinking it's real magic.
Okay, so that was a very interesting video. I thought it was very informative. I learned a lot, and I thought it was really good. What really stood out was when he was talking about it was when I was thinking back to 2020 and when, people were talking about getting the jab and are they going to get Pfizer or Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson was like the big joke. Like, it was like if you were going to take that, you were probably going to get some kind of deformity or something. And I just thought that time was funny. It was like a huge marketing ploy, and I remember people talking about what they're getting, either Pfizer or Moderna. People were saying they were going to get Pfizer. Some were saying they're going to get Moderna. I thought it was very interesting how marketing worked at that time, to have people make a decision, on their health to go with one of these two companies. And, not much I can say about that. That's a different topic. But I just thought that was when I watched this, it just 2020 came to my mind because it was very much marketing at that time. Let me know your thoughts on it. Comment down below. You can check my Patreon link. That's in the description below. And there's new merch coming out too, since we're talking about brands. This is if you've seen them in my videos, I've been wearing this a lot. We're trying to get that thing going. But let me know your feedback and let me know what your thoughts are on the shirt. If you'd like one, reach out. And we'll see you next time, Under the Influence.